Others have suggested a minimum income for a guaranteed income for people. Is that worthy of attention now? Perhaps so.
Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was on MSNBC, where she finally, I guess, acknowledged the existence of a universal basic income as an idea that is perhaps, maybe, possibly, one day worth considering. Now, this is likely as far as she's going to go. I'll talk more about this, though, once I show you the clip.
As we go forward, let's see what works, what is operational, and what needs other attention. Others have suggested a minimum income for a guaranteed income for people. Is that worthy of attention now? Perhaps so, because there are many more people than just in small business and hired by small business, as important as that is to the vitality of our economy, and other people who are not in the public sector, meeting our needs in so many ways that may need some assistance as well. But we're talking about the lives of the American people. And again, the pull and push of should we open up or not, if it jeopardizes the lives of the American people, we have to handle it with care. But again, recognize the realities of it all. What is the execution of it? What is working? And what are we getting our money's worth on? I think we have to look at that, too. How is the money being spent?
All right. Ultimately, that's just a whole lot of nothing. Nancy Pelosi just floating ideas. Oh, we have to think about this. Maybe think about this. Is this worth considering? Maybe. Really, what this shows me is that, once again, every time I see Nancy Pelosi, I basically get the same sort of result or feeling from it. And that's Nancy Pelosi really doesn't care. This Democratic leadership right now is horrible. Horrible. And I'm going to get to another example at the end of this video with Chuck Schumer and what he's proposing. The work that he's really focused on right now. You are going to laugh. But first, let me just give you a perspective here as a Canadian. So we don't have a universal basic income right now, but it's as close to one that I guess you can get without actually it being universal. So we have the CERB. So it is Canada's emergency response benefit. Basically, it's $2,000 a month, which amounts to about, I think, $1,400 American every month. Keeping in mind that we have healthcare covered in Canada, so certain costs you don't have to think about when it comes to this money coming in. So $2,000 a month Canadian for 4 months at least. It may be extended if this continues. But $2,000 a month for 4 months. And then on top of that, after it runs out, you can still collect unemployment insurance, or here it's called EI. Collect EI after the $2,000 a month for 4 months is up. So that's what we have. And it covers most people. For students, there is a different, it's $1,250 a month for students. If you didn't make a certain amount of money in 2019, you can apply for the student benefit. But ultimately, it covers most people. If you're out of a job, if you're at home, if you lost your job because of COVID-19, you're essentially covered with that $2,000 a month. Now, there is no reason why this can't be applied to Americans. And this is the real issue right now. Trump and the Republicans are pushing people to go back to work. They're pushing these states to reopen. And a lot of people, a lot of Americans, because they don't see any other solution, because they don't have any income, they still got to pay their rent, their mortgage, they still got to buy food. Because they don't see any other ideas being pushed by anybody else, at least in terms of leadership of the Democratic Party, then many voters, many Americans are seeing that, I guess, going back to work is the only option. And sure, even if many of them think it's dangerous, we could get sick, I could die, they think, I guess it's worth the risk because I need this money to live. I need to be able to survive. Whereas if you actually had the Democratic leadership pushing for a universal basic income, there was a unified message around it, where every morning they were on television fighting, screaming at the top of their lungs for help for the average American, trying to get people $2,000 a month. But by the way, a proposal already put up by Bernie Sanders, other Congress people, actually, as I'll get to in a minute. So it isn't like this is a completely alien idea. No, there are members within the Democratic Party that have pushed this idea out there, but the leadership of the party, Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, do not want to adopt it. If you actually had the Democratic Party with a unified message around a UBI, it would show Americans that there is actually another way and that you don't have to go back to work. And in fact, you can stay home and be safe while collecting a universal basic income. But because there is no pressure right now on the Republican Party to actually do that, then a lot of Americans don't see any other options. And look, it's not the faults. I should say, in terms of the protests of people wanting to go back to work, those conservative protests, it's a very slim amount of people. But for those people, largely they are just misinformed. They are just unaware. They're not given any other solutions. So I say that because often the blame is, I think, misplaced. The blame really shouldn't be on the people that are struggling, that see the only way out of this is to go back to work. The blame should be put on political leaders, on the Republicans, on the Democrats for not actually offering anything for people so that they can stay home and continue living. So let me get to... actually, first I want to show you this tweet from Justin Jackson, an NFL player. He tweeted out saying, "Government has spent $5 trillion through 4 bills, and you still have to pay your rent on no income." This gets to the heart of why a lot of Americans feel the way they do right now. They see the government working. I mean, they're doing something, but they're working in the best interests of business, not of the average person. I mean, you have to offer people solutions, or else they have nothing else. They have nothing else to grasp, nothing else to really see as a way out of this if you don't actually offer them real help. Now, I want to go just take you through a little timeline here in terms of UBI and how it's gotten to the point that it is right now. Of course, Andrew Yang deserves credit here for popularizing a universal basic income during the primary. Of course, the idea of a UBI has existed for a long time before Andrew Yang came around. There's been pilot projects in Canada, in Europe, maybe even in the US. So it's been attempted before, at least in small ways. But Andrew Yang, of course, deserves credit for popularizing it as $1,000 a month. That, of course, is before the pandemic. During a pandemic, you need more than $1,000 a month to be able to live. Even $2,000 a month, I think, is really the baseline in terms of what people need. So this is really where it all began. Tulsi Gabbard and AOC backing a universal basic income in response to coronavirus. Two different plans, I should say, though. Tulsi Gabbard's idea was to essentially take on Andrew Yang's idea of $1,000 a month. So again, during a pandemic like this, $1,000 a month is just, it's not going to cut it. I mean, it's better than a one-time check of $1,200, but still, $1,000 a month is not nearly enough. But AOC at this time was also raising the idea of a universal basic income. Then, of course, Bernie Sanders came out with the real plan. This is what should be pushed forward right now. Bernie Sanders wants all households to get $2,000 a month during the coronavirus crisis. That was on March 17th. And then a bill in the House came up from House Democrats, payment of $2,000 a month for Americans. So this was from Tim Ryan and Ro Khanna. They raised this, and now we're at the point where it's pretty much going nowhere because leadership doesn't want to take it on. Here's what leadership is actually doing. Here is Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer to introduce legislation preventing Trump from signing stimulus checks. This is where they are putting their energy. Trump, in a smart political move, has his signature on the stimulus checks for the people that actually have received it. His signature is on those checks, so I guess it's supposed to give the impression to some people that, oh, look at this, Trump gave me $1,200. Wow, he deserves credit for giving me $1,200. Look, I say it's smart politically, but if you have any sense at all, you should realize it's just a pure political move. That said, it's still one that works on some people. And fine, whatever. But for that to be the focus of the Democratic Party right now, for them to be focusing on taking Trump's signature off the checks, as opposed to actually fighting to give more checks to people, to give more money into people's hands, I mean, it really shows you how twisted their priorities are. And ultimately, one of the big issues here with why I think they're not supporting a universal basic income is because, much like the Republicans, Democrats are also tied to big business. And they have this worldview where they don't want people to feel like they are able to survive without being a slave to their employer. So by keeping people in this, by keeping their voters in this very limited worldview where to live, I have to be a slave to my employer, they're not going to back a universal basic income. Also, with the fear that people may really like it and want it to continue after the pandemic's over, which I would have no issue with. But of course, they would. So ultimately here, as always, we see two parties that are not fighting for people, that continue to fight for business, just to varying degrees. Not much of a difference. Not, in terms of economic policy, very little differences between the two parties. And it's just sad. The only way out of this, in terms of having a party that will actually represent you, is to replace the leadership of the party. Replace Schumer. Replace Pelosi. Get Tom Perez out of there as the DNC chair. That's the only real way out of this in terms of having a party nationally that represents you. Now, of course, at the same time, there's no issue with trying to build a third party. I think it's smart to try and build a third party, put some outside pressure on the Democratic Party to maybe try and act in the best interest of people. But again, the party has no... As long as they think they can continue keeping their power, even if they lose the election in November, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. So this is what I've said in other videos, but this applies across the board when it comes to all these stories. The Democratic Party, I don't think, really cares about winning the election. They care about retaining power of the party for the current power structure within the party. So Democratic leaders, Democratic consultants, Democratic donors, as long as they retain power of the party, that's all that matters to them. That's why you saw them fight Bernie Sanders harder than they're fighting Donald Trump right now, because all they truly care about is retaining their power and their wealth.